Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1487. The topic is nutrition, and the title is, Does Meal Timing Matter? So I had one of my online clients, they sent me a video that they had seen of someone explaining a recent research study that was done that compared meal timing. People who ate more in the morning versus people who ate more in the evening, and did it matter for fat loss? Now, the study, I'll kind of get to the point of it, but they said that no, that there wasn't really a big difference between the groups. The group that did the morning eating versus the group that did the evening eating. Now, the study was actually interesting because they had all the participants split in half, and half followed a morning load routine, half followed an evening load routine for 4 weeks. They then had a week to kind of reset, and then they flipped it. So the group that did the morning feeding now went to the evening. The group that did the evening now went to the morning. So it's kind of nice to actually use the people against themselves. So it was a really good way to not have to worry or wonder if the differences between the groups were actually genetic differences between the people themselves. So having the people actually do both types of the diet was great because you didn't have to worry about the genetic component. So the study overall was a neat structure. It was a week of people eating relatively healthy to kind of normalize and even out each person's starting place. Excuse me. Now, what that did was that helped to normalize everyone's metabolic kind of starting position. Like we said, is the idea behind that is that it helped make sure, or kind of better ensure, that each person was coming into the diet in a similar place metabolically. Now, I have a podcast, an old one, 454. Now, you can go to our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We have the podcast player right there, and it has instructions on how to find old podcasts. But podcast 454 was a nutrition podcast titled Where You Start Matters. And in that podcast, we talk about that if you come into a fat loss diet and you've been previously overeating, that is different than if you come into a fat loss diet and you've been previously undereating. So where you're starting the diet, whether you're starting the diet from overeating, whether you're starting the diet from undereating, or maybe you're eating kind of the right amount of calories, but it was haphazard and not really the best foods. So now you're going to kind of just fine tune that. Those are three very different starting places, and you're going to respond differently to that diet, at least initially. So where you start a diet really matters, and it makes a significant impact on how your body responds to the start of that diet. Now, over time, that can normalize out, but the initial start, the first week or two or even 4 weeks, can be very different response depending on whether you're coming into it from being overfed, underfed, or appropriately fed, just inappropriate foods and timing. So that was neat. So they did a week to kind of prep everybody for that. That's relatively short, but for a study, they did a week beforehand, 4 weeks of a certain diet, a week in between, 4 weeks of a diet, and then they tested everybody. So you're looking at 10 weeks of research. They would, that's already a lot of work, a lot of expense, and everybody had to, kind of commit to that. So trying to do it any longer just wouldn't be feasible for the study purpose, cost-wise and whatnot. Now, some other things that were neat about the study was all the meals that the participants ate were provided for them from the researchers. So the meals were all weighed and properly measured. Everything was highly accurate. It was very consistent. And anybody who didn't finish a meal had to report that they didn't finish a meal. So that way the researchers would know. The macronutrient split was 30% protein in the diet, 35% carbohydrates, and 35% fat. So it's good to know, and it's important to know, that there was absolutely adequate amount of protein, meaning that there would have been over 0.6 grams per pound of body weight. This is important to know, and I'll mention why later, but there was over 0.6 grams of protein per pound of body weight for each participant, in the sense that it sufficiently fueled protein. So it's already important to know that if we're comparing a diet, whether you're eating in the morning or eating in the evening, protein has to be there. It has to be consistent. If protein wouldn't have been consistent, they wouldn't have had a controlled caloric deficit in the energy nutrients of fats and carbs, and they wouldn't have gotten the predictable fat loss effect. What was also neat about this study was they tested and tracked each person's caloric usage per day. So try to make sure that everybody was in kind of an equal amount of caloric deficit. They tracked their BMR, kind of like their basal metabolic rate, resting metabolic rate, you might have heard it called. That's the majority of the calories we use is just by being alive. Our organs burn calories. Our body does work to keep us alive throughout the day. And then there's what's called thermic effect of food, which is how many calories we burn to digest the food that we ate. They tracked that so they could account for that per participant, and then they track daily activity. And that way they were basically tracking each person's total caloric usage to know, what level of a deficit were they in. Was everybody in a similar deficit? Were some people 10% under their, caloric maintenance? Were some people 30? Was some people 5? So they would have known that and been able to kind of normalize that. They also tracked their hormones, which was really cool. Just a bunch of different ones related to hunger and other odds and ends. So it was really cool to see how much they actually tracked when it came to trying to gather the research and better understanding the true effect that the diet was having on the people. So if some people had weight loss and some people didn't, they wanted to know, was that because of the food we were having them eat, or did that happen because, maybe a certain couple of people, they got together and all of a sudden they did a walking group because they met each other, and then maybe after they participated that day, in whatever they were supposed to do testing-wise, they all went for a walk every day. So you would want to know, was it due to brand new activity? Was it due to other factors? Did somebody all of a sudden start taking the Synthroid? Take like a synthetic thyroid medicine, and then all of a sudden they lost weight. Like, you would want to know where the weight loss was coming from. So they did all this, and it was a really cool, like I said, a really cool structure for them to try to track all of those elements. Now, one thing I want to point out was that the calorie distribution in the study was not as extreme between morning loading and evening loading as what I see with real life clients. So the study, they had the groups broken into two different parts. One group had morning loading, one group had evening loading. As we said, they did that for 4 weeks. They took a week to normalize. And then everybody flipped to the other style for 4 weeks. So the morning group, they divided the calorie intake into thirds. You're going to be very common. You're going to understand that very well if you're coming from our podcast, because I talk about dividing your day into 5 to 6 hour blocks all the time. And I always say you should eat a third of your calories in protein in the first 1/3 of your day, a third of your calories in protein in the second third, and the final third of your calories in protein in the final third of the day. So they did a similar thing here. They divided the day into thirds. Their distribution, though, was a little different. They had the morning load people eat 45% of their calories in the morning, first 1/3, then 35%, then 20%. So it was 45, 35, 20. The evening group, they had the opposite. So 20% in the first third of the day, 35% in the middle, and then 45% at end. Now, to me, I really, 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 really wished they would have done this more extreme, because this is not what I commonly see. What I commonly see is that people barely eat a third of their calories, so 33%, by the time they get to the evening. Most people skip breakfast or eat a crappy breakfast. They skip lunch or they eat a crappy, on-the-go fast lunch. So their splits look more like 15-15-70. So if you're talking about a realistic, what we really see in the real world, evening distribution would be 15-15-70, not 20-35-45. So testing those numbers, I'm really bummed, because I feel like they missed the reality of how most people actually eat. Now, if you're already into health and you're already tracking your food, and this is a normal thing for you, You might say, well, actually, no, like I usually do something like if I miss a little food during the day or if I have to eat kind of quick, my numbers do end up kind of like that, like the 20, 35, 45. But again, that's not common for most people when their goal is fat loss. They're going to want to eat nothing all day and eat everything at night because that's what they're already doing and that's why they're fat. So this is why people love intermittent fasting, because it's like, oh, I'm already eating nothing all day and eating everything at night. So now I'll just name it and somehow it'll magically result in something different. That's ridiculous. So you're already not eating during the day and eating everything at night. You then find that some people call that intermittent fasting, so you can say, okay, I'm going to do that. You've already been doing it. If it would have worked, it would have worked, right? So why intermittent fasting actually does work is because there's controlled calories. They don't eat just everything at night. They eat the exact amount of calories they should at night. So you might say, okay, well, if I'm already in the habit of eating nothing during the day and eating at night, well, then I'll start controlling my calories, and that'll help me control weight loss. You're right that you will get weight loss. But this, again, is where I'm kind of bummed that this study didn't look at greater extremes. Because they did have participants track like their hunger throughout the day. They had them track their hunger levels like basically every 30 minutes on like one of the days. And it was just to see, okay, were people difference in hunger between the morning load versus the evening load? The people who ate more in the morning, were they less hungry throughout the day? The people who ate less in the beginning of the day, were they super hungry at night? And the answer was they were both equal. The further away you got from when you ate, the more hungry you were. Duh. So if the people ate more in the morning, they were more hungry at night. True. If the people didn't eat until the evening, they were more hungry during the day. True. But again, what was missed in this was that they didn't do a realistic, like real-to-life extreme. Meaning that most people don't, like I said, have over half of their calories already by the time they eat the evening meal. So if they didn't eat during the day and then they ate at night, the participants would say, it wasn't really that big of a deal. I wasn't really that hungry. Yeah, because you had 55% of your calories already during the day. Most people barely hit 30% or 33%. So they're going to come into the evening even more hungry than what these participants would have recorded or reported. So the participants didn't have to stress or worry about overeating at night because they weren't as hungry as somebody who would only have, say, 30% of their calories by the time they came into the evening. Also, these participants had their meals pre-made for them and they knew they had to eat this food. What if you come home, you're hungry as hell, nothing's made for you, and all of a sudden you have to scrounge around the house to find something? You're going to find the fastest, easiest freaking thing to find because you're hungry as hell and you're tired. So you're not going to make the great healthy choices that these people made with well-balanced macro meals because they're not already pre-made for you. So there's a lot of components that studies like this they can't really include into the study, such as, meal decisions at night when you're dead tired and super freaking hungry. So that's a huge component that's really something to consider. So when we look at the general premise of meal timing, can you lose body fat whether you eat in the morning mostly or whether you eat in the evening mostly? Yes, both methods will help you lose body fat. But there are so many other variables, like daily energy. If I have just a small deviations, like they said, like 20, 35, 45, I won't feel too much of a slump in energy during the day, but I'll feel a little bit. But if you've only been doing 15, 15, 70, you don't know that you feel like crap during the day. And when you make that change, you are going to feel so much better. I actually had one of my online clients who went through this process. And this is why I think it's super fun to hear these kind of studies that are done compared to real life. And what I mean by that is real life, you get a lot more you get a lot more data that is applicable to individuals. So the studies are interesting because they can give you an idea of kind of how the body works, but then you have to learn how you actually feel doing the diets. So one of my clients, they recently have been trying to eat more throughout the day. I'll give you an idea. They have been eating kind of little throughout the day, eating mostly at night. I asked them to start to shift more of that toward the day. I said, let's get at least 3 individual meals in a day. So rather than only getting 1 or maybe 2, like maybe 1 meal during the day and then have a big meal at night, try to get 2 meals during the day and then have that meal at night. So they started being able to do that. And they said, I've been focusing on eating more at my 2 main meals of the day. And they said they've been back in the office and that's been helping a lot. But they said energy has been great. Quote, I've been feeling amazing. Energy has been great. I haven't felt groggy, and my brain has felt so much more clear. Isn't that amazing? They then went on to say, thanks for hanging in there with me. And what they meant was they struggled for a while to kind of get to this mindset to eat more during the day. And as we talked through it, as I helped them with education, we started making small steps. Can you get 500 calories in before dinner? Can you get 600 calories in before dinner? Can you get 700? We just started kind of working our way up. We started working on protein. We started with, can you just get 50 grams of protein a day? Just that. And then we kind of worked our way up. And it really made a big difference for them. So there's a lot that happens when people take diets like this, studies like this, and they say, okay, well, they're saying that meal timing doesn't matter. So therefore, I can keep doing my 15-15-70. I can keep doing, half-ass in my breakfast, maybe an okay lunch, and then have the majority of my food at night. No, no. The study was done with splits of 45, 35, and 20, not 15-15-70. So the hunger is going to be much greater when you're away from your food. Your energy is going to be so much worse when you're away from your food. Your mood will be worse. You don't have meals pre-made for you. You have to go make all your meals. So there is just so much that is going to be different. And then a huge component, enormous component, was that they didn't measure muscle tissue. Now, the study was only 10 weeks in total. But if you were to do this over an extended period of time, say 3 to 6 months, so 12 to 24 weeks, if you do not have consistent protein coming in during the day, you will not be able to maximize the amount of muscle tissue you have in your physique. If your protein is haphazard or it only comes during mostly during 1/3 block of the day, usually in the evening, you're not going to have great muscle tissue. Muscle is broken down and built every second of the day. If you don't have protein available in your bloodstream, muscle's just being broken down and broken down and broken down. And then you eat a bunch of, calories and protein, but your body's going to process that. It's going to use whatever it can while it digests that protein. But then all of a sudden there's this extra, the rest of the time until you eat again. So if you only eat in the evening, you're eating in the evening, your body's going to use some of that while you sleep, and then you're going to wake up fasted, meaning you have nothing in your bloodstream, and you're going to spend all damn day tearing your muscles apart doing different activities, and then you're going to eat a bunch of protein in the night, and then it tries to repair it. Maybe it can barely repair it, but it certainly is going to be able to put on a bunch of new mass. Now, can people do intermittent fasting for building muscle tissue? Yes, you can. You have to be in a caloric surplus. You have to have sufficient protein. And what that actually ends up being is you have to eat a shitload of food, basically, at the end of the day. And you'll find most proponents of intermittent fasting for muscle building, they have a protein shake when they wake up because they're big fat liars. And they'll even tell you, they'll go, yeah, I do intermittent fasting, but I do a protein shake in the morning. Then it's not intermittent fasting, you jackass. It just frustrates me. Don't call it that if you're not doing that. That's what people tell me. I'm following my diet, but I have a soda every day, and sometimes I have a snack for this. And you're not following the damn diet. If you do intermittent fasting, that doesn't count a protein shake during the day. It doesn't count an intra-workout drink. So I've seen people like natural pro bodybuilders, and they'll say, like, yeah, I do intermittent fasting to build muscle, but I have a protein shake when I wake up, and I have an intra-workout drink with carbs and protein in it. It's like, that's not intermittent fasting. Gets me so mad because they confuse the shit out of people. And it's just really annoying and frustrating because they're trying to sell their diet. They're trying to make it seem different than what everybody else does. So that way, if you've been struggling with what everybody else says, you might buy their program. And it's just so freaking annoying that people do that. Why do you hurt people for money? It's just absolute bullshit. Can't stand it. So, way on a rant there. Sorry about that. But now that I'm way off on a rant, this has already gone too long. The summary of all of this is at the end of the video, the person who explained the study and said that, it makes no difference for fat loss whether you eat more in the morning or eat more in the evening. They said, just do what works for you. No. What works for people is laziness, because everyone, including myself, will do the laziest damn thing they can. That's human nature. Why in the hell would I want to do a bunch of work if I don't have to do it? Especially in something that I don't really care about, right? So, what works for you, but within context. So, you have to do what works with you within the context of what actually works. So, calories still have to be controlled. Whether you eat more in the morning versus the evening, calories still have to be controlled. Whether you eat more, protein. Whether you eat more protein in the morning versus more protein in the evening, the protein still has to be controlled. You have to eat enough protein. And then there has to be at least some blending of calories and protein in order for all of this to work. You cannot and you will not sustain for a long period of time with the best energy and mood without a crap ton of caffeine and the best body composition. You cannot do that if you don't eat anything all day and only eat all of your food within a 4-hour block. It's too extreme. It's not how the freaking body works. It just does not work sustained. It does not work long term. The only people I've known that have done that style, that extreme variance of food and done it sustainably use an enormous amount of caffeine. I mean, I'm talking about 600 to 1,000 milligrams of caffeine a day. Most crazy energy drinks have 240 milligrams of caffeine, maybe up to 320 milligrams of caffeine. So these people will take 600 to 1,000 milligrams of caffeine. And then they're saying, well, my energy's fine all day. Yeah, because you're drugging yourself. But that is not a sustainable way to manage your nutrition. My takeaway on this is if you don't like to eat during the day, maybe you're just not really hungry, maybe you're super busy, you would want to aim for at least 50% of your calories within the first 2/3 of the day. If you can get to 50% of your calories in the first 2/3 of the day, then only having 50% of your calories in the last 1/3, good enough. You're going to avoid most of the pitfalls that are unassociated with just pure weight change. So you're going to have decent energy, decent mood, decent water retention, decent body compositional balance, decent muscle tissue. So if you can at least do 50% before the end of the day, that's going to go okay. Now, is that what's best? No. Hell no. What's best is to put more of your calories and protein in the time block that you're moved the most. So if you work out in the middle of the day, more of your calories and protein should be in the middle of the day. If you work out in the morning, more of it should be in the morning. Okay? So I went way off my notes on this one and just got grumpy and mad, but I hope that I explained something helpful in here. Does meal timing matter? If you're looking at purely just changing your body weight, no. You can eat whenever and your body weight will change. If you want to talk about the quality of what you look like, the quality of what you feel like, the quality of your digestion, the longevity of whether you can actually keep doing this, then meal timing absolutely does matter. For quality of change and for longevity, meal timing absolutely matters. Okay, So sorry I went on a rant, but I hope it was at least somewhat beneficial. If you have any follow-up questions, just shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you ever see a study or a video or anything like this that you'd like to hear my opinion on, I'm honored, by the way, that you would like to hear my opinion. So feel free to send that to me, and I'll definitely do a podcast totally for free. I love doing this stuff. So thank you to those who've been participating and sending me a bunch of things. I love this. This is super fun. It's really, I just feel good that I get to counter some of the BS that's out there in the world. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. Well, if you like today's podcast, the podcast in general, please consider sharing the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people the podcast can help. If you share it on social media, that helps the most people. If you share just a conversation with somebody, if you know they have nutrition or training questions, let them know about the podcast and tell them that I'll answer their questions for free. You can even tell me what their question was, and I'll make the podcast, and you can send the podcast to them. Just the more people that are aware of the podcast, the more people it can help. Thank you to the patrons and the people who donate to the podcast. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year. I give an hour to it every day, and we want to keep it for free. So thank you for those who donate. You can do so at our website, www.brutalirongym.com. There's an option there for a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation. So thank you to those who do that. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything that you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.